Welcome to What Matters Most.
We are dedicated to educating the community about holistic, metaphysical, and spiritual topics.
Each week, we discuss things that matter most in life, the things that are most important to you that may have fallen to the wayside.
We are always centered on the idea of simplifying life, connecting with our neighbors, and following our true paths.
Our mission is to empower you to live the life that you've always dreamed of living.
We invite you to focus your life on what matters most.
This is Kristen.
Hi, and this is Maria
And
from Experience Nirvana.
that's right. And today we will be discussing Qigong.
For healing.
I want to say Qigong, but it's Qigong.
It's actually Qigong.
And later on in the show, we're going to have Fran Mayer and Brian Coffey, who actually studied at, they study traditional Chinese medicine, and they are both the gurus of Qigong.
What was interesting to me about Qigong was that I always just thought of it as kind of the practice of Qigong. I didn't realize the relationship of Qigong with Tai Chi and Tai Chi Chi, and there's all of those other practices kind of fall under the umbrella of Qigong. I didn't understand or realize the relevance of Qigong as far as a differentiation between the fact that you could be a practitioner or practicing Qigong for your own healing benefits. I thought it kind of was more relative to maybe getting you more centered and focused on the now. I didn't realize the long-term benefits associated with it, and I didn't realize that was there was another complete segment that had to do with martial arts and how you could transfer this chi energy into not only protecting yourself, but also it has quite amazing powers.
Yeah, I was reading that it's life force combining the elements of mind, body, and breath, and it sounds very similar to me. Being a yoga practitioner, to yoga, it sounds very similar to yoga, but I understand that it's much more in depth.
It seems like it takes it to another level.
It's a different level.
Yeah. What I actually like about the practice also is that it really does empower you to be able to take control of your emotions and how you deal with things, which ultimately have an effect on your physical existence. And in some of the research that we did, it was amazing how it was so beneficial in helping people heal from injuries and illnesses and actually recover themselves.
And you've actually done Tai Chi.
I've done Tai Chi Chi. And
what's the difference between Tai Chi and Tai Chi Chi?
I have absolutely no idea. The only thing that I can tell you is that Tai Chi Chi is individual movements. You can actually put it together into a flow, but when I think of Tai Chi, I actually think of it as a series of movements that kind of make one particular session.
Right.
I don't think Tai Chi Chi, I think it's a simplified version of it. Because I know that at one point I actually rented a DVD thinking that I'll practice it this way. And what they were doing on Tai Chi wasn't anything that I had learned in Tai Chi Chi. So, but the Qigong, I actually did watch some of the video footage on that, and that to me felt very similar to the Tai Chi Chi. The thing about Qigong is that its foundation has to do with the 5 elements of the earth, wind, fire, and all of that.
Metal.
I'm sorry?
And metal.
Metal. And actually, the movements replicate mostly that of water.
Okay.
And so they're very fluid. It's really amazing.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of, I'm sorry, this is going to sound ridiculous, of Avatar.
Avatar. Now we're talking Avatar.
No, but it's
I'm
true.
sorry, listeners, to have to be subjected
No,
to
I'm
this.
so serious. If anyone's ever watched the cartoon Avatar on Nickelodeon, they actually incorporate, there's airbenders, there's waterbenders, and it looks like they're doing like a Tai Chi kind of shtick. Even it came out in the movies. Come on, Avatar, the Airbender, and it focuses on that.
I'm not familiar with that.
If you go to the movies next time,
I'll have to do research
even
on
if do you have? No, go to Blockbuster, who's going out of business, and rent the movie Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it shows them actually. It looks like they're doing a Tai Chi thing. It's really interesting. It really is.
I actually like the idea with Qigong, the fact that you could actually be a person that that could make the differentiation of like, I want to use this practice and learn Qigong to just help myself, and or I may decide that I want to really take it to the next level and utilize it for martial arts.
Or you can use it for your like it sounds like parents. I remember them mentioning that if you're a parent, you can use it for your kids if they.
And the powerfulness of this is in some of our discussions with Fran Mayer and Brian Coffey, is that they offer a workshop that I can't remember how many weeks long it is, but even if you are somebody that are just like, oh my gosh, this is really something amazing, I want to know more about this, they can actually take you through the process of being able to utilize this Qigong to not only help yourself, but to also help other people in the healing process. You don't have to be a person that was already practicing Qigong for 3 to 4 years, and now you can be indoctrinated into taking it to a new level.
Right,
I thought
it's
that
really,
was
it's open for anyone.
Absolutely.
So don't feel like, I've never done this, I don't know a whole lot about it. It sounds like anyone can take it.
Anybody can learn. They've taught many, many people how to utilize this Qigong for healing, and actually they reference it as the clinical version of Qigong.
Right, and they've been doing this since 1994, and they actually have their own healing and learning center. So they're a very interesting couple, and they're coming up next.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to speaking with them. I think that I hope that you listeners will actually find it as exciting and as enlightening as we actually did.
We're here with Fran Mayer and Brian Coffey. Fran and Brian have practiced and taught the classic healing arts of China in central New Jersey since 1994. Both are graduates of Nanjing University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Fran is a diplomat of acupuncture, and Brian is a licensed massage therapist specializing in clinical Qigong. And in 2010, they actually opened a healing and learning center. So welcome, Fran and Brian. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Hi.
So, Fran and Brian, if you could tell us a little bit about your journey into Qigong, what brought you there, and how you became so involved in it.
Right, how'd you get into this?
Well, I think for Brian and I have always, lifelong, been very, very interested in health and also in fitness. And at some point in time, that sort of transitioned into our wanting to know a little bit more about the inner game of health and fitness. So we began to, we began with, exercises and diet and things like that. This is long before we knew each other. And then we wound up getting into, Brian particularly into yoga. I was into yoga also. Mm-hmm. I hooked up with a Sufi teacher who was wonderful. And we began to look at the spiritual side of health and wellness. And this was before we met. And when we met, then a big part of our courtship was, believe it or not, exploring the spiritual side of health and wellness, and particularly the energetic side. Brian had just taken a Qigong course, his first Qigong course, from a master who was here from China with Columbia Presbyterian Medical School, seeing if they could find out what in the world came out of this man's hands when he went to heal.
As Fran mentioned, I was always involved in athletics, and I found I actually started Tai Chi, or Tai Chi Chuan, in 1978, and people would talk about energy. The Chinese call that Qi. Mm-hmm. And they kept on, my teachers kept on talking about it, but I never experienced it. And so it wasn't until 1991 that I got a palpable, real experience of Qi, and that was in that Qigong class. And from that point on, I began sensing energy, mainly with my hands and also my feet, and began becoming more and more aware of it and recognizing that it could be a daily experience, and so we played with it, actually, the two of us, Fran and I.
Brian, explain to me how you're experiencing energy in your feet. That's interesting because as a Reiki master teacher, I experience it in my hands, but I haven't experienced it in my feet, so tell us about that.
Well, it was interesting because I was taking a particular course with this master who had come from Beijing, China. And you're aware of the palms of the hands. Typically, they're looked at as a wonderful generator or antenna.
Yes, I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
The feet are too. And it's interesting that just behind the ball of the foot, there is a point that the Chinese call, and the translation would be the bubbling spring. And it's very, very similar to the hand. And so as I was experiencing and practicing the Qigong that I had learned, I remember I was walking from my then house in Millburn to the train station to commute into New York, that I could sense my feet in a much different way, and those points had opened.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really quite an amazing experience.
Is it, Brian, is it 5 points on the feet?
There are actually 2 points
on
the feet, one on each foot, and then esoterica in Chinese will say that there are additional points. And there seems to be a slight disagreement as to where the other points are directly on the feet.
I wondered about that because I've taken Tai Chi, and I know that there's always a reference when you make the transitional movement to notice the 5. He always would reference the 5 points on the ball of your foot, and that sometimes it takes a while before your awareness goes into that aspect, and I think that's interesting. And let me ask you, a lot of people are into Tai Chi in this country. It's becoming more and more common to hear of someone experiencing the practice, but I don't hear of people actually that commonly referencing Qigong. So explain to us about why you got involved and how Qigong fits into the umbrella of Tai Chi, or in reverse, actually.
Yeah, I look at Qigong as being an umbrella term that includes Tai Chi.
Yeah.
And so when I first learned Tai Chi, and by the way, I sort of say that tongue-in-cheek, learning Tai Chi is really a lifelong process.
Mm-hmm.
And so we begin learning it by bits and pieces. Usually there's a form that the person learns. But in that form is the richness. And so that richness usually doesn't come about until they're really with a very, very good teacher who helps to light the way, to let them know what is an energy experience and what isn't, or how to position the body in such a way to engender that Qigong or energy experience. So people practice Qigong for many, many different reasons. Tai Chi people will practice Qigong to improve their facility with the energy, because the power of Qigong for martial arts can be generated that way. But people also practice Qigong for health. And you could look at that as two sides of the same coin.
Right.
A person will look at developing their energy to improve martial arts, and therefore recognize how to disable an opponent energetically. Whereas a person who is more interested in the health aspects of Qigong will study Qigong and how the energy flows through the body to improve the energy circulation and to bring those areas of the body that are not working properly up. So we're talking about now, and I sort of hate to say clinical Qigong or the other terms that are currently being used, like medical Qigong. To me, it's just Qigong. It depends upon where you're moving your emphasis to.
So it depends. I'm sorry, Brian. So it depends on where the area of focus is for you. So if I was a person that was looking to practice Qigong, for my own health improvement and betterness, etc. I might not actually understand or know how to use Qigong to protect myself or use it in a martial art form. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, Brian, tell us a little bit more about the medical or the clinical side of Qigong and how people can use that.
May I answer that one?
Absolutely. Please, Fran.
Okay. There are several styles of Tai Chi, and there are many routines, dozens of routines for people to practice just in general, being able to move Qi and feel Qi in their bodies for general health. However, there are 3,000 to 4,000 kinds of Qigong remedies for specific kinds of health problems. And Qigong is also practiced as a healing art, where one person affects the energy field of another person by assessing it, making corrections in that energy field, reassessing to make sure that what they intended actually happened, and also recommending a practice for that person to do for themselves to help improve the balance of energy in their bodies. So they have something to do on an everyday basis.
Fran, that sounds very similar to Reiki. Is it like Reiki? What is the difference?
Well, I think one of the differences is that that there are 3,000 to 4,000 remedies that a Qi healer will select from for a person to do for themselves, and that's about 8,000 years old or more. The development of these different Qigong practices.
I'm sorry, Fran, can I just interrupt? When you reference remedies, are remedies like herbs or remedies movement? I'm not sure what remedies actually are.
That's a great question. Remedies tend to be a combination of body, mind, and breath, because those are the of medical Qigong. So they might be a stillness meditation,
I see.
And there are many of those that might be a moving meditation. It might be a combination, but it might be a breath meditation. It might be just a particular mind or scene. It might be a healing sound that a person makes, but they are all self-generated once the person has a recommendation from somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of this person's particular imbalance being corrected.
So the clinical medical Qigong is really about healing.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
And so as a person, or as people that are already excellent in this field or masters in this field, you have the capability of more or less directing a person not only in their practice of doing Qigong, but also taking it to a level of really helping to heal themselves.
Yes, definitely. And furthermore, kind of the proof of that pudding is that we also teach this skill, this ability to help others. We've taught it to close to 200 people here in central New Jersey, and also people who came from as far away as Canada and the state of Virginia and so forth. But they are also, after they take the 5 weekends of courses that we teach, they are able to do this as well.
Was that something that, if I were to be interested in doing that, would I have to be practicing part of the practice of Qigong already for a period of time before I would be able to take that particular curriculum and course? Or is that something where suddenly, I'm interested in it?
A newcomer.
Yeah, a newcomer, a newbie, yeah.
Well, we teach this to people who have never done Tai Chi or Qigong before.
Really?
Teach this to people who have never even heard of it. We teach this to physicians and nurses and occupational therapists and massage therapists, families, and just individuals who are interested.
So it's not something that, like, it's part of my evolution process of doing Qigong. It sounds like it could be, like, now I'm ready to take it to the next level, but it could be somebody, I've never done this before in my whole life.
And then you're going to start on day one.
Wow. It's very powerful.
It is very powerful, and our teacher was, he got a lot of flack for teaching these very advanced methods with so little requirements made on the person. Traditionally, this would be taught only after many years of devoted application to a teacher.
And so this is part of the classic healing of China. You mentioned at one point in our conversations that it's not even something that's really being actively pursued or practiced in China at this point in time. Is that correct?
It comes and goes.
Waves.
It's in or out of favor in China, sort of depending on what the political climate is there.
Interesting.
Wow. So I was doing a little bit of homework, and I saw that I guess after a while of practicing Qigong, you can actually learn to assess and locate the Qi, maybe some imbalances in someone, or you can actually develop your ability to see Qi. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So Qi, yes, and if you could explain to our listeners what Qi is and tell us about how people can actually start to see it.
Well, it's interesting. The Chinese have a character that says you pronounce it as qi. It could be air or space or breath, or it could be this vital life force. So when you see it written in the Chinese language, it could be a number of things, and you have to see what it is in context of what the person was writing about. So when we're talking about it when it's a vital life force, our teacher often talks about the universe is very, very big, yet we're very, very small. And so we are really a hologram of the entire universe. And so as the energy moves in the universe, so it does in us. And so when we begin studying how it moves in us, we find out that there are a number of energy pathways. We in the West call them meridians, and if my Chinese is close to being correct, it's called Jinglo. And so there are a number of energy pathways. Some of them are associated with organs. That would be then, there are 12 of them, and because the body is divided in half, so there would be 12 on one side and 12 on the other. So there's a meridian that would be associated with the lung and another associated with the large intestine or the liver or the gallbladder, etc. And then there are certain meridians that are called extraordinary meridians. The difference in a way between the meridians that are associated with organs as opposed to the extraordinary ones are the ones that are associated with organs are considered like rivers, while the ones that are associated with the extraordinary meridians are considered to be oceans. And so they have a greater capacity. And so what happens is as you begin following, say, along an organ meridian, it has along the pathway close to the surface of the skin, there are what an acupuncturist would needle. So they're often called acupoints. I find them, I would rather call them an energy gate or an energy window. And so along then an organ pathway, these points or gates or windows, if they're somehow activated, they give you some information about what's going on inside the body, or they can actually change what's going on inside the body.
And as an acupuncturist, I will tell you that they do not need to be needled. There are many other ways. And in particular, using the mind. But you have to know which ones that you want to use, because over 8,000 years, empirically, we know that certain points have certain very, very predictable outcomes if you activate them.
Okay.
And so that's sort of our empirical background, is that these points have been used for all that time. Anything that didn't work got thrown out about 2,500 years ago.
Wow.
I'd like to jump in for a moment, and that is these points are very, very interesting in terms of activating them, and as Fran said, they can be activated with the mind. At first, when we say that seems to be a little bit strange, because since these acupoints or meridian pathways are not really in our culture and in our awareness, The question is, how does one develop that kind of an awareness? So if I say put your mind on a point along, say, the arm or the foot, at first this person might sort of look at you quizzically and figure out how to do this. So I like to use the analogy of, if you have an itch on your shoulder, say your left shoulder, you know immediately where to go to be able to scratch it to begin to relieve it, if that's what you choose to do.
Right.
But if I say put your mind on your big toe, or on the pinky side of your big toe in the webbing, a person might have a little bit difficulty doing that. And so one of the ways we help the person is by touching the point. Once they sense the touch, then they know where their mind needs to focus. Then with a little bit more help, a person can then, with practice, be able to find that point without touching it.
Would you say that if a person that is practicing Qigong, actually their awareness to be able to do that, it becomes intensified?
Yes. Yes, sometimes it's very easy to do, and I like to use the story of I really don't like to be cut off on the road when I'm driving. And a long time ago, I would express that by following the driver and letting them know how displeased I was.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You were one of those people.
They call it road rage.
But then what happens is then you have two people on the road who are acting a little bit ridiculous and unsafe. And so now what I do is I put my mind in my big toe.
Oh.
And at first this seems strange, but because my mind knows exactly where it needs to go, and it knows where to linger, I can open that point in seconds.
Why is it your big toe? Why isn't it your belly button or whatever?
Right. The liver meridian begins in the big toe, and it then goes on a pathway on the inside of the leg and eventually hovers and connects to both the liver and the gallbladder. And that pathway that I just described is a rather superficial one, and so it has many points along it. But then internally it goes to the eyes and then to the crown of the head. What happens when a person is angry a lot? The energy rises of the anger, and eventually, in fact, it's called liver fire rising or liver yang rising. See, the diagnosis in Chinese medicine is a description of how the energy is behaving, which is usually the source of an energy imbalance. Oftentimes what we do is we have other names for it, like a person had a stroke, or a person has migraine headaches. So we talk more or less in symptoms rather than actual causes. So what happens is when I put my mind on the big toe in that specific point, I can literally feel heat from my anger leaving my foot through my shoe.
Wow.
So
rather than allowing it to go through my body and go all the way up to the crown of my head.
So that's what we mean by dealing with the cause rather than the symptom. In Chinese medicine, they'll say that Qigong and Chinese medicine deal with the roots and the roots of the problem, and many other medicines are more likely to deal with the boughs and the branches.
The symptoms and all of that. One of the things that I noticed in reading up about this is they talk specifically about how the average person only uses about 5 to 10% of their 15 billion brain cells, and yet studies show that Qigong activates 90% of the human brain by suffusing it with stimulating bioelectric currents. I thought that was really, really a very powerful thing to be able to take control of, and I wasn't aware of that at all with this practice.
It really is amazing. But I have to say that in our society, we're usually very, very aware of what our brain is doing and what we're doing. And I find that Qigong helps me bring me out of my brain and bring me more into my body and my surroundings. And it brings me more into the now or the present, which a lot of gurus say is a very, very appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, I was reading, and I remember seeing that it kind of takes people from that automatic flight or fight mode of stress to more of a restorative place, almost as if the same properties of yoga.
Right. Well, what you're trying to do is balance the chi or balance the prana, regardless of whether we're using an energy model that's based in the yogic tradition or the Qigong or the Chinese medicine tradition. We're talking about energy.
Right.
And when a person is balanced, they're going to feel calm and peaceful.
Right.
And they're more in the moment. Typically, when we're not in the moment, we're thinking of either in the future, about what's going to be happening, or we're mulling over something that happened in the past.
Right. Those aren't always happy thoughts.
Right.
So those kinds of thoughts lead to energy imbalances.
Sure.
And the Chinese use the idea that anger affects the liver more than any other organ. Stress affects the heart. Sadness affects the lungs. Thinking too much and being worried and wanting too much affects the spleen. And in Chinese medicine, they don't energetically differentiate between the spleen and the pancreas. And then fear or threat to security or one's security affects the kidneys.
The kidneys, right.
So a chi healer, by assessing a person's body, can tell where these imbalances are and can help a person deal with them.
That's wild. That's
with
really
exercises or just with recognizing.
Right. So they can target right to where they can figure out where it's going on and target right there. That's really amazing. That really is. Now, Fran, can you tell us some examples of how this has affected, of how Qigong has actually affected people's lives? Because it seems so amazing. Its properties really seem quite
dynamic and everything.
Dynamic, exactly.
So you're looking for some case studies?
Right, yeah. Tell us about what has happened to people. How has this moved people and changed people's lives?
I think one of the things that's hardest of all when you do chi healing is to keep your mouth from falling open while you do it.
Interesting.
Because we really do see wonderful things take place. I will give you just a really simple example.
Sure.
A mom came to us for chi healing, and she brought her 2 children along, and they were going to take a plane ride the next day. And the little girl had a very raw sore throat, and they were concerned about flying. And we worked a little bit on that little girl. A child needs so very little intervention. And we worked on the mom, but when they came in, the little boy had just been stung by a bee. And his upper lip was all swollen up. He was probably a 4-year-old, 3 or 4. And what Brian did is Brian did a takeout procedure for this little boy's lip. And before our eyes, this big swollen lip returned to its normal size, and we went, whoa!
Oh, my God.
And how long would you say that took, Fran?
Pardon?
How long did the procedure take?
Seconds. And of course we were just thrilled. This was kind of early on when we had first started practicing, and surprised. Nothing good would happen, but we just didn't expect that the swelling would just go right down like that. But the humorous thing about it is too that I saw the mother later in the day, and she said he told his big brother. This little boy told his big brother when he got home that this man had pulled his lip way out to here.
You're kidding. That's so funny.
Brian didn't touch it, but the child could feel the pull on the energy field.
Wow.
I was going to say, I was wondering if the child was actually feeling that.
Well, you heard what he told his brother, so. They, and you can't fool kids. So, he wasn't doing anything to make this to be tremendously cooperative. He was just there with his big stung lip.
Does the healing practice also help people that have more severe physical conditions?
Absolutely. We still rely on that assessment that there's damp, which means an accumulation somewhere in the body, or there's heat, which might mean an infection, or a lot of preclinical conditions are very much helped by this long before they ever become diagnosable with a Western diagnosis.
Yeah, right. Before they become apparent, in other words.
Yeah. And yes, and you can feel wind with your hand, or you can feel coldness, and you know that you have to correct that, and you correct that with methods that you learn as a Qi healer. There are about 5 key methods that work for most conditions that you can assess with your hand or with your eyes, too. We encourage people to use their auric sight, and we even teach a little module on practicing that during the Qi Healer course.
Well, like Reiki, I know that Reiki works on a physical plane, a mental, a spiritual plane. I'm assuming Qi Gong also works not only on physical, but maybe on emotional or areas of upsetment or blockages.
Yes, it can. Although we don't necessarily divide it up like that.
Right.
Sometimes when you're assessing a person's body and you notice that the energy over the liver area is a little bit higher than the rest of the body, you might start by asking, are you subjected to a toxic living or work environment? And the person might say no. And so we then go through some more questions, and then eventually we ask them, do you experience anger a lot?
Right. So you might narrow it down to what it may be.
Yeah, so the energy that we're reacting to could be a number of causes, and so we work with the client themselves to sort of help us determine what's going on. We know that the energy is high there, but we're trying to figure out why and what they're doing to possibly create that kind of condition. Then we know better because we can make the adjustment and help them come back to balance. But if a person's imbalance is caused because they're just really, they get angry very, very easily and get worked up about it, then the minute they leave the office, if they trip their toe on the way out, they could become angry and become out of balance all over again. So the question is, it's not just the balancing of the person, but to help them realize how they can help themselves become more balanced more regularly. I mean, we're human beings. We're going to have emotional situations, but as long as we let certain emotions get underneath our skin too long, those are going to keep us out of balance and possibly lead to more difficult and more challenging kinds of diagnoses that we would get in the West.
And so then you would share with them some remedies that they need to incorporate into their lifestyle to help them get those imbalances under in control?
Exactly. What I look at in a way is trying to begin to separate stimulus from response. Because automatically we think that everything, or not everything, but often we think that something is automatic. This happens and I do that. That this other thing happens and I do something else. But we don't usually connect a cause and effect relationship to the imbalances in our body and realize that we can do something about them.
I like that a lot, Brian. Only that resonates for me because as I had mentioned to you, as a Reiki healer, it's always been a struggle for me because, I feel like you do the work on the individual, but now they go out into the world. And how do you help them to be able to bring their life into balance? And what are the as you would reference, remedies that they could do to keep this to a minimum? It's life, so there are always circumstances that are going to happen.
So we all know that there are certain people where they are in life who just want to be fixed. But most people will really, gee whiz, whenever I do this, now this other thing might happen. And once they begin seeing a connection between what they may be doing and then recognizing that they can cut that off at the pass whenever they want to, then that empowers them. And look at it as a success, when a person doesn't come back. We're not looking for a person to be coming to us every single week, because then we're not doing our job.
Now, can you tell me, because in yoga, I am a yoga instructor, and in yoga, ways that, we try to have our students kind of maybe a way that they can practice on their own by increasing their prana or their chi, as you may say, is, there's different breathing techniques of ways to really gather your energy and boost it up. Is it the same in Qigong?
It's similar, but there's also a recognition of how the person reads beforehand. I think of the positioning of the hands sometimes when we're sitting in a cross-legged meditation. If I'm too yang, that is, my energy rises up too easily, then if I'm sitting for a gentle relaxation and a meditation, if I position my hands with my palms up, I might bring my energy even more up than it was before.
Right.
One of those times, and maybe when I'm using a mudra or a specific position with my fingers, maybe I'll point my palms down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that would be one instance that I would think with yoga.
Another thing that we do with Qigong is we do cleansing exercises, so that you have a way to clear and cleanse things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we also, like yoga, do things that move Qi or move the energy in the body.
Right.
And from what I was reading with Qigong, the practice itself is relatively easy to learn as compared to, much easier to learn than even the yoga practice. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes and no. It really depends upon the person. And I'm really, I really think that two practices really go hand in hand. But one could focus more on one than the other. I just look at it as we should find some way to become peaceful and relaxed. That's really, really important. I find that I'm trying to search here.
I think it's the specific remedies that differentiate Qigong from yoga particularly.
Oftentimes when I practice yoga, there was a term called pranayama.
Right.
Which means that oftentimes the breath and the prana, the chi, is connected.
Right.
In Qigong, you can do that, but you can also separate the chi from the breath.
Wow.
So if I might be moving the energy in my body, and I'm not really concerned about my breath. It doesn't make any difference whether I'm inhaling or exhaling.
I gotcha.
That's interesting.
So is there any, for our listeners, because sometimes people don't try new things because they're intimidated, but once they actually give it a little bit of a shot and they can see how it can affect or help their lives, it might actually motivate them to take a Qigong class or a yoga or whatever it may be. So do you have any very simple techniques that you can share with our listeners, maybe just one simple technique that someone can try to practice at home, and so they can see the benefits of Qigong that might motivate them to take a class?
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead. Fran's going to handle this.
Brian talked a little bit about putting your palms up or your palms down.
Right.
In Chinese medical tradition, with your palms up, you are gathering energy from the vastness of the universe. It's very stimulating. There's a lot of movement, and there are a lot of fiery bodies and out in space, and you can gather that with your palms up. So if you are someone who wakes up in the morning and wants to go right back to sleep, in other words, not a morning person, what you can do when you wake up is you can turn your palms up, and you might find you don't even need that cup of coffee to get going.
Wow. I might have to practice that tomorrow morning.
I was looking at Kristen and I was thinking, I'm pointing at her and I'm going, that's you.
Now, on the other hand, if you have a hard time falling asleep at night, if you just, lie down and your mind's going a mile or a minute, you might turn your palms towards the earth, which is very yin and mysterious and cool and moist and calming. So if you turn your palms towards the earth, just as you lie there in your bed, so your palms are against your mattress instead of facing up,
Right.
then you might find that is something that is very pleasant to do, and you might not need that sleeping medication, or you might not need to, spend 45 minutes trying to calm yourself down before you go to bed.
I gotcha.
Maybe we should say you might not need that last glass of wine.
Yeah, there you go. So you're eliminating coffee and you're eliminating wine. Wow.
What's left to live for? I don't know.
Well, we'd like to ask, what is it that matters to both of you the most as far as the impact that you're looking to make?
One of the most important things that we're doing is we found something that has affected our lives profoundly, and we want to share it with other people.
For me, the most important thing is that this medicine does not become lost just because,
right.
It doesn't have a whole lot of push behind it, but it is a medicine that is accessible to everyone.
Right.
Anyone can do this for themselves, and they can learn to do it for someone else as well. And this is a medicine for all times and for all people, and we want it to grow.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully with today's message, we will reach more people, and more people will be stimulated to actually experience the wonderful ancient method
healing properties
themselves.
Associated with it, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Fran and Brian. It's really been quite insightful and very informative.
And so we'd like to conclude this show with reminding our listeners that, once again, it's the simple things in life that matter most. Namaste.
Namaste.